Welcome back to Shape of the City. Every child deserves an equal opportunity to succeed, no matter their background. It's a wonderful concept, but not an easy one to necessarily achieve. That is where the community comes in. Michelle Suarez, developer for the Early Childhood Program with Prosper Lincoln, will fill us in on their initiative to improve the future for children throughout our community. Thank you for joining us, Michelle.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, well, let's get started. First of all, tell us what Prosper Lincoln is and how did it get started?
Prosper Lincoln is a community agenda. It really isn't a program. Or an organization. It's an initiative. And it really started after the recession of 2008. And I think in about 2011, people came together and kind of said, what is the state of our community and how can we improve it? So there was something called Vital Signs, and Vital Signs came out in 2014-15 and really shared with the community that things are going very well for many people in Lincoln, but there are also some people in Lincoln who are struggling. And so because of that report and the interested and caring community, leaders in our community came together and really followed a process to be able to get ideas for how we could improve our community so that everyone prospered and was healthy. And so out of over 2,000 ideas, through a narrowing process, we came up with three concepts. And one is early childhood development, another is employment skills, and the other is innovation and entrepreneurship. So I am the early childhood developer, and it's just been a pleasure to get out in the community. I've been at this job for about 4 months and learned just a great context of the early childhood community, and knowing that we have a lot of work to do.
Well, tell us more about this early childhood pillar of Prosper Lincoln.
Well, we have, of course, our mission is to make sure that every child gets what he or she needs to have a healthy start so that they can prosper in Lincoln. And we have a strategic plan, and it can be summarized in 3 words, and that is educate, advocate, and transform. So in the education piece, we want everyone in our community to know the importance of the early years. That's when children are laying the very foundation for their future. And we also want our community to see what we invest in early childhood as a community asset. So to the degree that we can invest in our children, we're going to be a healthier and more prosperous Lincoln. We also want to remind our community that it's important to read aloud to kids, because that is the single most important thing that people can do to create literacy and lifelong learning in children. So that's the education piece. And then once we get to the education piece, we believe that we want to and we must create advocates for this work. And advocates from the business community, because then once we have the business community integrated into this work, then that becomes the very fabric of our community. So we want to create a business roundtable so that we can get those champions and influencers to affect a lot of different aspects of our community. And the other piece is creating an early childhood network. And that can be done in a couple of, ways of doing that. And one is creating a partnership and an avenue so that the people who are actually doing the work, providing the early childhood care and development, that they can come together and really support one another, advocate for each other, advocate for this work in the community. We also see it happening at a cross-sector level. So we have business, education, providers, our anchor institutions, our government, our community members coming together to advocate for this work because we know it's so important. So once we educate and advocate, then we also want to transform. We need more capacity for quality early childhood care and development in our city. Right now, about 2/3 of our most vulnerable kids do not get high-quality services. And so we know that that's the single most important thing we can do to create their health and well-being. We also want to gear our community to early childhood care and development so that any kind of event that we might go to, that there's something for children, young children to learn and participate in. And then the other is we really need to attend to the basic needs of our families with young children. And that could be as simple as how do you care for a crying baby, a colicky baby, to it could be housing, it could be food, it could be clothing. So we really want to create a community care about our families with young children so that our young children are healthy, because that is when we can make the biggest difference, when our kids are young.
Yeah, very good. Well, tell us more about the health piece of this, since we are talking about health here on Shape of the City.
Yes.
How does what you're going to be doing with early childhood, how does that affect the health of our community?
Well, the health really is the foundation for any one person, and we know that when children are young, that is when we can make the biggest impact. Children are born with just looking at their world and learning so much, and so if we give them the proper nutrition, proper movement, proper care, proper socialization, they're going to be much healthier. It makes a difference because if kids are healthy, then they can go on to learn and then reach their hopes and dreams. Our goal is to make sure that every child is kindergarten ready, which means that they're ready cognitively, socially, emotionally, physically to learn and what they need to learn to be successful. About half of our kids are reported to not coming to school ready for kindergarten because of behavior or cognitive, social, emotional kinds of issues. And so once they come to kindergarten, it's already late. And we do everything we can in schools to remediate and to give children what they need. But if we would only do that in the early years, it would be much more effective and much more efficient, not for our community in terms of services, but also for the children themselves, because then they're able to get what they need to continue to grow and prosper.
What do you see as some of the biggest challenges to meeting this mission?
Well, there are multiple challenges, and one is even the prestige and the wages that we pay the child care professionals. And I think you might have heard, or people might have heard, that child care professionals make about $19,000 per year on average, which for a family of 4 would put them in the poverty range. And that is not sustainable for our child care professionals. We also know that we seem to think, in general, that perhaps we don't revere our child care professionals as we should. And so we might revere the college professor. And yet we really need to revere the early childhood professional as well, because they're doing some of the most important work, very challenging work. So that's one piece. The other piece is the cost for early childhood care and development. A lot of our families are in the workforce, both mom and dad, or mom or dad if they're in a single family household. And so we need to be able to provide some kind of policy to be able to help support our families. It's been said that the cost of child care is about the cost of the tuition and fees at a college of higher learning. And so we need to be able to think about how can we provide quality and provide care so that our children get what they need. But it's not an easy solution because, again, we need to be able to pay our child care professionals more. We also need to be able to invest more in helping parents get what they need to be able to make sure that their kids get what they need.
So tell me what successes you've seen so far, and are there any success stories you can share with us?
Yes. Well, what I know about the people that I've been talking to and their early child care professionals is that there's just tremendous passion in the work that they do. They just come and their mission is to impact the lives of our young children. And so seeing the work that they do has been absolutely inspiring. A little bit of a challenge, but also a story. I was talking with one center director, and he talked about that it's hard for families to be able to pay for child care. And so a family that he spoke to me about was receiving some subsidy from the federal government to be able to provide that care, but they still had a family fee to pay, and they weren't able to pay that family fee. And so that was a struggle for the mom. The child care provider had to struggle with how do we pay the bills. And so that was very challenging. Do you say, sorry, this child can't come to this quality place for care? We know that the child needs it, the mom's looking for a job. And it was hard for the mom to look the child care provider in the eye because she was so embarrassed that she couldn't pay for her portion of it. The child care director did stay with the mom, and the child was able to continue attending, but it's just that very tenuous balance of trying to make sure that our families can afford what they need to pay for child care and that our kids get what they need. And so it's very challenging. But again, back to the passion of seeing how our child care professionals are providing for kids. It's very inspiring. And the other piece of that is in the community, there's so much support. And I think there's a sense of what can I do? How can I support this work? I think that Nebraskans do know, and Lincolnites do know, the importance of it. But once we know the importance, and if we know the importance, then what are we willing to invest? And that has to be the final question then. How much are we willing to give to this work so that our child care providers and professionals get professional wages and that our kids get what they need?
Mm-hmm. Now, if we have viewers today who are interested in learning more or giving back and being part of the process, what should they do?
Well, they should check the website for as a starting place. It's prosperlincoln.org, and there are a variety of ways to get involved. There's always donations for a variety of opportunities to impact the lives of young children. But there's also just a myriad of ideas in terms of whether you're a community member, faith-based, just a variety of, there's just so many ideas listed that can get people thinking about how they can be involved. So I would first ask that they go there. And the other thing is there are just so many resources. So if people want to find out what about the early years, they can go to the Center for the Young Child at Harvard University, or they can look up James Heckman, because we know it's just so much more efficient and effective to invest when kids are young than it is later.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us today.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here.